Hello, and welcome to the Inside ODOT podcast. My name is Liz McIntyre from our Delivery and Operations Division, and I'll be your host for today's episode. In this episode, Audrey McHugh-Britton explains how drone LiDAR technology helps engineers collect data in rockfall-prone areas. Next, you'll hear from Amanda Carter about how she uses her background in transportation to serve as ODOT's librarian. And for our final segment, Corissa Anderson-Horvath and Jessica Curteman emphasize the importance of foresight, adaptability, and collaboration between our environmental and construction partners. Welcome, and let's get started. Our geologists use drone LiDAR technology to identify high-risk slopes along Oregon's highways. In this segment, automation analyst Audrey McHugh-Britton explains how drone-collected data helps our Unstable Slopes program track changes in rockfall-prone areas.
The Unstable Slopes program is run by our state geologists here at ODOT, and what they have done is identified all of the highest risk slopes along our state highways, both landslides and rockfalls. And for our purposes, we're interested in capturing rockfall data and how things are moving there for this project. What we've been able to do with LiDAR is we're able to collect a high density of data over a much wider area so that they can actually analyze the data in the field, but also back in the safety of their office to view the entire site as a whole. It used to be that we only had mobile LiDAR and static LiDAR, which is just based from the ground or from a moving vehicle. However, now we have our drone LiDAR unit, so we can collect data in the air, and we're able to collect higher rock faces and a higher density of data. They're also able to use this data to more accurately identify where the problems are, and they can use that to model what failures will occur and design mitigation plans off of that. With all this data, we've got 3D surface information, we've got hundreds of overlapping photos that we can mosaic together into one image of the site. All of our survey control, all this data combined is massive and previously would have been completely inefficient to try to collect this much. And with it, the geologists are able to do their jobs more safely, more quickly, and in some cases more accurately, because they know the exact locations where material is being sourced from during rockfalls. The data that we're collecting with the drones allows us to not only create a lot of great mapping products and imagery, but it actually is showing us what's changing over time, and that's been really critical for the geologists and doing their assessment of the site. So by comparing data of a single site over periods of time, we're able to actually see the change in the surface at that site. We're able to know the magnitude of change there, the exact location of the change there, and the volume of material that's moving. And we're able to do this by setting targets and survey control of the site so that when we fly, we're able to make sure that we're hitting the same area, that everything lines up nicely so that the changes we're seeing between our data sets is actually showing change of the rockfall site in question. And again, that change is massive for the geologists because knowing that exact location allows them to pinpoint their efforts for their mitigation planning and their analysis.
ODOT's library provides access to transportation-related information and research assistance. For our next segment, we meet ODOT's librarian, Amanda Carter, to learn how she discovered this role and what it was like for her to transition from life in the southern United States to living in the Pacific Northwest.
I wonder what it's like to live elsewhere, like outside of the South. And I saw this job, ODOT librarian. It just seems like a perfect fit. I have worked in various transportation industries in the past. I did archives for a while. I love archives. I was very excited to see that, so I applied. And it turned out it worked out. So I took the literal Oregon Trail over here, and here I am living the life because I love it. All I had heard about the Pacific Northwest was it's raining a lot. I think it's a hidden secret about Oregon and how gorgeous it is. This is your very own librarian, and I will get you any kind of transportation-related materials you need. So please ask. I definitely want to be that bridge to access.
Our monthly ACEC lunch series in Region 2 gives many educational lessons on project delivery topics. For our last segment, Environmental Coordinator Corissa Anderson-Horvath and Archaeologist and Tribal Liaison Jessica Curteman share how they address environmental changes in construction through preventative solutions and collaborative partnerships.
Environmental is a unique piece of ODOT because we're one of the only parts that are from the very beginning of scoping that go through the design, and we're there for construction. I mean, I'd say little paving projects, we don't always go out on those, but some of them we do. And then when they go to maintenance, I still keep them because I'm also the maintenance biologist and maintenance rec. So this is a whole life phase for these projects. So I know most people who worked me will hear me say, but maintenance isn't going to like this. It's because I will get it back in the end. And so a lot of this is how do we make a better product? And there's a lot of environmental issues, and some of them aren't really even the permits as much as the issues that pop up during construction that we just didn't see coming. And after being here for 17 years, I've seen a lot of stuff that I was not expecting. On these projects that do have environmental issues or just kind of big and need some working, it's not just environmental. It could be hydro, it can be geo. It's all these people where we stand and we point and we say, can you actually turn the crane this way? Do you have enough room? How are you going to get down here? Is this big enough? Those are the things we're trying to figure out really early on. So it's always best to find a solution that has a really good preventative option. We're hoping not to have you guys spend any more money or anyone else to do it because, as we all know, there's little money going around for a lot of projects. So we want to be as preventative as possible. We do find solutions on the go. We do find them during construction, and we work really well to try to do it. In construction, a lot of people don't go out, so they don't see it always doesn't go as we thought it was. After the fact, the whole project's done, the REs come back and tell us how it went, what we're doing, what went well, what went bad. And I think that's the most magnificent thing because we can't fix things until we know what we didn't do right or what didn't go well. And my new favorite one, I'm dealing with this again yesterday, and I know that everyone gets frustrated with this, is Tree Removal, Utilities, and Migratory Bird Treaty Act. A lot of it is our utilities and multiple other ways. For some reason, they're not getting moved early enough. And this is something as a project team, maybe we think a little bit more about how do we get these out of the way? Can we get them out earlier? How do we do it? Because the worst thing in the world is we have the perfect amount of time to get started working, and there's a gas line or a Wi-Fi line, but not a Wi-Fi line, another line, and they're not moving it. And they were able to clear some of the trees, but they couldn't clear these trees because of the power lines. So suddenly now we're paying for APHIS to come out and try to see if there's birds nesting, which there were, and, trying to make sure all the birds have hatched and going out there. And it's costly because you have to start watching. And when you're in groves like this, we wouldn't do this on purpose ahead of time, but it created an issue and it took a while to get the trees down and therefore slowed down the project. So once it got going, we were good. But it's the same thing with the bid time. You need to make sure when you're bidding, we have time to remove the trees. I have a project right now where the utility is way late getting out there, and maintenance has come in to help us clear some trees, and they are trying to figure out how to get out there, and now we're bringing in APHIS to go out every 2 days to start monitoring these trees that are bigger fir trees. The other ones, luckily enough, it's high enough elevation. We're not getting enough leaving on there for the birds to nest, but in those big old Doug firs, they'll do it. So now we're going to spend extra money. The contractor is getting ready to start. Lisa's going out for a pre-con. So this is like an issue where the utility's not getting out of the way. Her trees are still in the way. And Migratory Bird Treaty Act, because people forget it's not just the trees, it's all the shrubs. It's your blackberries. If you drop all those trees and you just leave them on the ground, that is almost better habitat for birds. So it creates its own little nightmare there. So it's one of those things we got to think about. And some projects are unique and need unique solutions. I have been working on the Megler Bridge since I started here in 2008. My first project was passed on to me by Rod Thompson, one of our senior environmental people. And I have been working on it for 17 years. I did a rotation for 2 years, but I came back when the project I put out was still being painted, and I'm starting again. And this is probably my favorite project out of all, with the coolest stuff. We had aphids go out because of all the double-breasted cormorants that have now come on our bridge in the last 5 to 10 years and have just expanded. But to paint them, we had up to a foot of guano and poop and everything and nesting material stacked on here. So we had to find a way to keep it off as we clean it and keep the birds from nesting. And you can't paint the Megler Bridge. I mean, you can to a point, but to really paint it, you can't do a lot of it during the middle of winter. It's wet, it's blowing. You know, if you stripe it too early in the daytime, people drive over and it won't dry on even for like striping. It's an issue. So this is really cool. And we actually did a big piece that had the public outreach in there, and they came out and I think they recorded it. The cost was pretty high in the beginning, but APHIS is awesome. They only charge what they needed, and it was a lot less. And the project went smoother than we expected it to. So it's getting ahead of the problems, and it was a lot of work up in the beginning of the project, but it paid off. It was something that was well worth the time, well worth the money, and it worked out really, really well. I want to say thank you to everybody who's listening to this. What I'm hoping to get out of this in the end is preventative pieces that as a team we can find together throughout the whole piece. Go out on site. Go out with us. Go out with your rec. Go out with your bio. Meet with people out there. See the different things, because we all work out there, and I'm looking for flowers and fluffy things. You guys are looking for, where can we drill? How do we drill here? How do we get a drill machine here? And these are things that we don't always catch in these meetings. A lot of time with us also working remotely, it makes it a little more difficult. So we're all here to help. And I think this is the funnest job in the world. I mean, I still get to go out, and it's great. I enjoy it.
Archaeological investigations is one of the many environmental due diligences that ODOT needs to meet. It's required to make sure that we are not impacting archaeology sites during construction. There are state and federal laws that protect archaeology sites. We work with our state partners and our federal partners to ensure that our due diligence is met. Of course, during construction, things can happen. So the first thing I do during the design phase is I go through and I research what's the potential for there to be archaeology in the project area. Garibaldi is located on the north side of Tillamook Bay. This project is to restore a segment of 101 that pretty much goes through the entire town. Research is going to be limited to the actual written record. However, sometimes even the written record can tell a lot. Garibaldi has a long history of multiple different occupations. We also know historically that it was a big logging town, and there was a mill. That mill is no longer in operation. In fact, most of it is gone. However, we expected there to be quite a bit of debris from that mill and its influences to be seen, both maybe on 101, but also next to 101. We also looked at some Sanborn maps. These are fire insurance maps that insurance companies would create to figure out what their liability is for urbanized areas. And these maps are awesome. These are great for figuring out what historic downtowns look like at different time periods. This is a snippet from Garibaldi in 1929. It gives us information of like where buildings are, how tall they are, what materials they're made out of, where the windows are, where the doors are, and then what they are. All this research helps inform us if there is going to be archaeology, where is it most likely going to be located within our project. We also do consultation with tribes. Tribes also have information that may not be in the public record or in the state's archaeology record database. In this case, the Grand Ronde Siletz tribe has oral histories and stories of this landscape that can help determine when people were there, what they were doing there, and then also maybe some of the geologic changes, both natural and what people have done to the landscape to make it an easier town to establish. All this research helps inform us if there is going to be archaeology, where is it most likely going to be located within our project. So the next bit we do after our research is we figure out our high probability areas. In this case, we really wanted to understand the landform because we knew that Garibaldi has done a lot in its historic record to build up this land. So we have a lot of fill. We just don't know where that fill extends, where it stops, and how much has been cut into the hill slope. We have some assumptions. However, it's just never been ground truthed. So we wanted to see that from our field work, but we also took advantage of other folks' field work, like geology when they're doing their geotech probes, and also hazmat when they were doing their probes. That information helps inform us, but it's not, we're only getting a certain depth, we're only putting holes in certain spots, so there easily could be stuff we missed. And that's where we have an inadvertent discovery plan. Essentially, it's just kind of a walkthrough on what happens if you find something. And that's something, we have pictures in there too of what that something could look like. You know, if it's an old glass bottle, an old nail. So these are kind of the step-by-step process. There's a whole nother process if it's human remains. But that was also a concern in this area too, because we know there used to be a village site. Well, people die and bodies are taken care of in different ways historically. So we had to keep that in mind. So not only was the inadvertent discovery plan reviewed as far as like, here's what to do, we also established monitoring areas. So not only did we monitor the geotech work, we also identified areas that have the highest potential to have buried archaeological deposits. If we know that there's a known site, or if the potential for a site is so high that we just want to avoid it. Not only are there laws against it, if we know we're going to be damaging a site, we mitigate, and that is very time-consuming and very costly. We do a lot of work to make sure that we avoid and minimize our impacts, and one of them is to establish no work zones, but it helps protect the sites during construction. The orange fencing is a great way just to indicate to everybody, like, don't go in here. And this is also something we would go over on our on-site meeting. The no work zones, I really try hard to get them on the plan sheets themselves. We try not to point out what we are protecting because those plan sheets can become public information, and we want the location of the archaeology site to remain protected. So we could be protecting an endangered plant or a wetland or archaeology. So that kind of outlines all of the process leading up to construction, everything that ODOT invests in and that I do and other archaeologists do to try to make it so that construction goes as smooth as possible. So when something is found, the process is to stop work, protect the site, contract the wreck and the engineer, and try to work in a different location just to keep work flowing. If there's human remains, like I just stress this to everybody, if there's human remains, call the police, call the state police. We have to establish that it is not a crime scene. So if you find human remains, think of it as a crime scene. Don't touch it. Don't take photos of it. Hands off on it until the police can come and verify if it is or is not a crime scene. At Garibaldi, I met with the inspector. It was Mary. First encountered shell. She took a picture and texted it to me. That's the best way and most proactive way to get the inadvertent discovery out so I could respond to it as fast as possible. I was able to get emails and phone calls and everything out, and the next day we had an on-site meeting with tribes, ODOT, and K&E, and the museum archaeologists that I hire to do a lot of the archaeology work and monitoring work because I can't do all of that myself. And so the next day we were out there and we were investigating this find, seeing if it was something that we need to protect or if it isn't archaeology related. In this case, it was shell. So Mary messaged me. We got the tribes out there. We got the archaeologists out there. We figured it out. Not shell that we need to worry about. Construction can continue. As the construction went on, they found more and more and more stuff. However, because we had done such a speedy and appropriate response to the first inadvertent discovery, we built this great relationship between our inspectors, our construction crew, and the tribes. And so as we were finding stuff, we started getting really good at the process and understanding of what is significant that we do need to stop for and what isn't. They found more shell. She took pictures, sent it to me. I asked her a question about if there was bone associated with the shell. No bone. I looked at the picture. It looked like it was the same species of shell that we had found previously, so I wasn't concerned about it. And just through texts, I said, yep, looks good. Thanks for the pictures. You guys can carry on. And that is where we want to get in projects. If we're finding stuff, we want to get to that process where we're just exchanging texts real quick and construction is essentially not having to stop. Now, sometimes things are found that we do need to stop and pause about. And in the center here, this was a piece that was found. It really confused us. It was right under the road. We didn't know what it was, so we had to look it up. It's a hay spear or harpoon. So we did have to have an archaeologist go out there and take a look at this. There was also some bottles associated with it. An archaeology site is 2 artifacts or more. So technically this was an archaeology site. However, that doesn't mean that we have to redesign the project to dance around this. We just have to see what this site really is. And in this case, this was actually part of the fill deposit. When I say they threw anything and everything in as fill, I'm not joking. So once we figured that out, we were able to record it and move on. The construction could continue. We took out what we could for documentation reasons, but our archaeologist was already there on site. Since we already had a monitoring plan set up, they were able to keep working and get through that fill deposit with all those artifacts within a couple hours. Because we had done so much work ahead of time and knew that we were very likely to run into deposits and very likely to run into archaeology artifacts and maybe sites, we already had a monitor hired, ready to go. There are some areas in the project where a monitor is required. These were areas where maybe the geotech work found shell, or an area that the shovel probes suggest that maybe it's intact deposit. So we want to keep an eye on those during excavation. Because we had that monitor on hand with state permits at the ready, it meant that through these inadvertent discoveries, we were able just to send our monitor out there. There wasn't any delay as far as obtaining a permit, getting tribes familiar with the project area and what was found and all of this. Essentially, we can get everything rolling at the same time. So it's that relationship building and maintaining trust. And this project is still going on. And I still sometimes will get pictures from Mary. So far, we have not found anything substantial or concerning for the archaeology side. Construction side, I think they're a little frustrated with some of the fill deposit, like sawdust isn't really a good fill deposit, but there you have it. This case study is a great example of the ways that we can work all together, the designers, the planners, and the inspectors, to hopefully get to a good process in a very complicated area for archaeology.
You've been listening to the Inside ODOT podcast. If you'd like to learn more about these topics, you can find links on our show notes page. If you have any story suggestions or feedback, send us an email at the Inside ODOT mailbox. Until next time, I'm Liz McIntyre. Safe travels, everyone.